Welcome to one of the most unsettling cases ever recorded in Alabama history. Before we start, leave in the comments where you are watching from and the exact time you are listening to this narration. We are interested in knowing which places and at what times of day or night these accounts reach. In the fall of 1851, Montgomery County records noted something unusual. The widow Elizabeth Caldwell's plantation had produced a harvest 30% larger than any other in the area, even though she had fewer field workers than neighboring estates. A short note by the magistrate could have gone unnoticed forever, buried deep in the courthouse archives if it weren't for what happened in the winter that followed. A single line in the county ledger read, "Inquiry requested into unusual activity at Willow Creek Plantation. Denied due to insufficient cause." No further explanation was given, and no follow-up investigation was ever documented. The Caldwell Plantation was located 15 miles outside Montgomery, well placed near a bend in the Alabama River, where the water ran slow and shallow. The main house had been built in 1798, one of the first large estates in the newly formed territory. By 1850, the three-story mansion with white columns had fallen into dignified decay. Ivy climbed the eastern wall and paint peeled from the shutters. What set Willow Creek apart from other plantations was not the architecture but its owner. Elizabeth Caldwell became the sole owner at 27 when her husband Thomas died suddenly of what was recorded as brain fever in the spring of 1849. The marriage had produced no children. Those who knew the couple said Thomas had been a harsh and efficient plantation owner, notorious for his cruel treatment of the 53 enslaved people who worked the cotton fields. Elizabeth, in contrast, had mostly remained invisible during their marriage, a pale, quiet woman who rarely attended social events and was said to spend most of her time in the plantation's large library. After Thomas's death, neighbors expected the widow to sell the estate, or at least hire an overseer. She did neither. Instead, according to tax records from 1850, she reduced her enslaved workforce to 38, selling 15 men to a plantation further south. The remaining workers were mostly women, children, and older men. Despite this reduction, production at Willow Creek did not fall. Shipping manifests from the Montgomery dock show that cotton yields actually increased by 20% in the first year after Thomas's death. Montgomery society largely ignored the widow. She rarely attended church, declined invitations to social gatherings, and was described by those who met her as quiet, withdrawn, and almost rude. The minister's wife noted in letters that Elizabeth's behavior had changed after her husband died. "She carries herself differently now," wrote Margaret Holcomb to her sister in Virginia. "There is something in her eyes that wasn't there before. A certainty, perhaps, or something colder." What happened at Willow Creek between 1849 and 1851 is mostly speculative, pieced together from fragmented records, diary entries, and the single most important source, the Journal of Dr. Samuel Whitaker, found in 1963 during renovations of what had been his office in downtown Montgomery. According to Whitaker, he was called to Willow Creek on December 12, 1850, for what Elizabeth described as a matter needing medical discretion. Whitaker, who had been Thomas Caldwell's physician, wrote that he was surprised to find the plantation in excellent order, the house immaculately maintained, even though Elizabeth had let half the house servants go. The widow appeared transformed, he said. Where she once seemed constantly fearful, she now exuded a calm authority remarkable for a woman running a plantation alone. Whitaker's journal becomes increasingly unsettling in later entries. He describes being asked to bring medical supplies to treat injuries of a worrying nature without being allowed to see the patients. Elizabeth explained that some of her field hands had been hurt in a farm accident, but insisted on treating them herself under the doctor's guidance. Whitaker noted that the supplies requested bandages, laudanum, pickuses for infection, and splints for broken bones. suggested injuries more severe than ordinary farm accidents would cause. Most striking is Whitaker's account of what he noticed while waiting in Elizabeth's study on his third visit. "While the widow prepared the treatments as I had instructed," he wrote, "I felt a strange draft behind the bookcase. On closer inspection, I found that the entire shelf could be moved, revealing a narrow staircase leading below the house. Before I could investigate, Mrs. Caldwell returned. The look on her face as she saw me near the bookcase haunts me still. For a moment, I feared she might harm me." His next entry, dated January 18th, 1851, reads only, "I have made a grave error in judgment. God forgive me for what I now know and have agreed not to reveal about what happened beneath Willow Creek Plantation." Archaeological evidence is fragmentary. In 1967, a structural assessment of the remaining foundation revealed an extensive network of rooms under the main house, spaces that were not on the original plans. The rooms, according to historian Martin Granger's report, showed signs of long-term use, including simple sleeping arrangements, cooking areas, and a clever ventilation system to prevent smoke or cooking smells from being noticed above ground. Most importantly, Granger's team found a narrow tunnel leading from the underground rooms to the riverbank, hidden by willow roots and underbrush. The tunnel could have allowed people to enter or leave the plantation without being seen from the road or neighboring properties. The 1850 county census lists 38 enslaved individuals at Willow Creek. Yet, cotton shipping records suggest the harvest would have required at least 60 workers. The discrepancy was noted by a tax assessor named James Harrove, who visited Willow Creek unexpectedly in February 1851. Harrove's official report mentions nothing unusual. He confirmed the presence of 37 workers, one having died since the census, and wrote that the widow appeared to manage her estate with unexpected skill. However, a personal letter sent by Harrove to his brother in Tennessee in 1959 tells a different story. "I cannot shake the strangeness of what I observed at Willow Creek," he wrote. "The fields were perfectly tended, yet I counted no more than 20 people working them during my inspection. The production numbers simply don't match the visible workforce." When questioned about this discrepancy, the widow invited him to inspect the quarters, which he did. Everything appeared in order, though the cabins held fewer people than expected. Most unsettling was the behavior of the workers themselves. They moved with unusual coordination, as though performing a carefully rehearsed routine. None would look him in the eye. When he asked one woman directly, she looked at the ground and said only, "Mistress takes good care of those who work hard." That has stayed with me. Harrove ended his letter with an observation that would prove prophetic. "I do not believe I saw the full operation of Willow Creek. There is something beneath the surface there, perhaps literally so. I requested permission to carry out a more detailed investigation, though I doubt it would be allowed. The Caldwell name still carries influence in Montgomery, and many would rather not examine the widow's affairs too closely." Indeed, no official investigation followed. Hargrove himself died 3 months later, officially from heart failure, though no prior health issues had been recorded. The most revealing piece of evidence about what might have happened at Willow Creek comes from an unexpected source: the journal of Abigail Foster, the 18-year-old daughter of a neighboring plantation owner. In entries from October 1850 to March 1851, Abigail recounts increasingly strange observations about the Caldwell estate. In November, she wrote that her father insisted she accompany him on visits to Widow Caldwell. He said she needed a female presence, though Abigail suspected his interest was more personal than paternal. She described the widow as nothing like she had expected. She spoke little, but watched everything. Her home was unnaturally silent. On more than one occasion, Abigail heard noises where there should have been none, voices in empty rooms, and movement in spaces that seemed deserted. On one occasion, while waiting in the parlor, she clearly heard the laughter of children beneath the floorboards. When she mentioned it to Mrs. Caldwell, the widow explained that old houses could play tricks on the ears, and perhaps she heard the kitchen staff's children playing outside, yet no children were ever seen when the grounds were walked later. By January, Abigail's journal reflected a growing unease. Mrs. Caldwell invited her to tea alone. Abigail's father was pleased, believing the widow had taken a liking to her. Abigail, however, was less confident. During their conversation, Mrs. Caldwell asked pointed questions about her father's routines, the layout of their home, and his business dealings. Most unusual was her curiosity about the cellar and whether it connected to other parts of the house. She even invited Abigail back the following week to see her library, claiming it held poetry volumes that might interest her. Abigail found herself unwilling to return without understanding why. Her final entry about Willow Creek, dated March 12th, was deeply unsettling. She wrote that she had seen what lay beneath, that she could never unsee it, and that Mrs. Caldwell knew she had seen it too. She believed the widow was deciding whether she could be trusted or whether she too should disappear. The journal ends abruptly. Family records indicate Abigail was sent to relatives in Philadelphia the following week, supposedly for schooling. She never returned to Alabama. What exactly she saw beneath Willow Creek remains unknown. The historical record gives no clear answer, but surrounding evidence suggests a shocking possibility for the time. Between 1849 and 1851, Underground Railroad activity increased across the South. Montgomery was known to harbor several secret abolitionists who helped enslaved people escape to the North. A ledger found in 1960, hidden in a secret compartment of Elizabeth's writing desk, lists 25 names by initials, with dates and cryptic notes such as R-bound or C-bound, possibly indicating routes to the Ohio River or Canada. If Elizabeth Caldwell truly sheltered runaway slaves beneath her estate while maintaining her standing in society, it would be one of the boldest and most dangerous double lives ever recorded. The logistics of such an operation would have been incredibly complex. How did she feed extra people without raising suspicion? How did she move them safely? And how did she maintain secrecy among her own enslaved workers, some of whom must have known something was happening below the main house? Partial answers might lie in the detailed financial records Elizabeth kept. Her account books show purchases that would have seemed excessive for the number of officially registered residents at Willow Creek. Even more revealing are payments to riverboat captains, small but consistent sums, which may have supported moving people along waterways connected to Southern Underground Railroad routes. The human relationships at Willow Creek would have been complicated. The enslaved workers who stayed after Thomas's death seemed to form an unusual alliance with Elizabeth. Several neighboring plantation accounts note that her workers showed remarkable loyalty, rejecting offers of better positions elsewhere. This implies they may have been willing participants in her secret work, perhaps motivated by the hope of eventual freedom for themselves or their loved ones. What happened to Elizabeth Caldwell and her operation remains unclear after spring 1851. County records show she sold Willow Creek in April to a businessman from New Orleans. She vanished from Alabama society entirely. However, a letter found in 1958 in a Boston abolitionist archive mentions a Southern widow of means who provided extraordinary service to the cause of liberation at great personal risk, and who had settled in their community under a new name. The letter, dated July 1851, gives no other details, but the timing matches Elizabeth's disappearance. The fate of those hidden beneath Willow Creek is largely unknown. No mass graves or traces of violence were ever found on the property. This implies that if she did hide runaway slaves, she may have successfully helped them escape. The story could have remained hidden entirely if not for a discovery during the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Workers renovating the old Montgomery courthouse found a sealed wall compartment with a single document, a warrant for Elizabeth Caldwell's arrest for theft of property and incitement to insurrection, both capital crimes in 1851 Alabama. The warrant was dated April 10th, just days before she sold the plantation, and it had never been enforced. On the back of the warrant, in handwriting later identified as the sheriff's, was a note. "Some matters are better left undisturbed. The widow has gone. Let this go with her." What happened at Willow Creek between 1849 and 1851 will never be fully known. All other evidence was lost when the plantation burned in 1938. No photographs of Elizabeth have ever been found. She exists only as a shadow in historical records, glimpsed through others' observations. Her true motives a mystery. If she did create an underground railroad station at her plantation, operating in the Deep South during the height of slavery, she undertook one of the most dangerous forms of resistance imaginable. The mental strain of maintaining such a deception, presenting herself as a proper widow while secretly managing a network of freedom seekers, must have been immense. Every day required careful calculation, vigilance, and courage. The potential consequences for discovery were fatal, yet she continued. Through ledgers, coded notes, and witness accounts, a picture emerges of a woman navigating two worlds, one public, one hidden, with extraordinary skill. Though the full truth may never be known, the fragments left behind speak of bravery, secrecy, and an audacity that challenges the conventional understanding of Southern society in the mid-19th century. The echoes of her actions linger in the landscape, in the documents tucked away in archives, and in the haunting entries of a young girl who saw what lay beneath. Harboring those considered property by her society would have been a massive risk. Living constantly with the knowledge that discovery meant almost certain death demands a level of mental strength that very few people possess. In 1969, historian Rebecca Thornton interviewed descendants of families who had been enslaved in Montgomery County. One elderly woman, whose great-great-grandmother had been enslaved at a plantation neighboring Willow Creek, shared a story passed down through generations. "My great-great-grandmother used to speak about the White Witch of Willow Creek. That's what they called her. Not because she practiced magic, but because she seemed to make people vanish as if by magic. They said she had the face of a proper lady, but the heart of a fighter for freedom. Adults would stop talking about her when children were around. It wasn't safe to know too much about the White Witch, even long after she was gone." Perhaps the most chilling part of the Willow Creek story is what it hints at regarding other operations that may have existed across the South. Secret acts of resistance never documented, dangers taken that were never recorded, lives saved that were never counted. How many other Elizabeth Caldwells could there have been, working in shadows now too deep for history to reach? The place where Willow Creek Plantation once stood is now private farmland. Nothing remains of the original buildings except a part of the stone foundation that once supported the main house. Local people say the area has a strange quality, a stillness that feels intentional rather than natural. Some report hearing whispers when the wind moves through the old willows lining the creek. In 1968, an archaeological team tried to fully excavate the underground rooms, hoping to find proof of their purpose. The project was abandoned after a series of unexplained equipment failures and the sudden illness of the lead researcher. The excavation was filled in, and no further study has been attempted. Visiting the Alabama State Archives in Montgomery today, one can still see tax records, shipping lists, and other official documents that tell the public story of Willow Creek Plantation. But the private story, what happened beneath those carefully tended fields behind that polite facade, is mostly untold. Some secrets, it seems, are kept not only by people, but by places themselves. What we know for sure is this: For a short time in the early 1850s, a widow named Elizabeth Caldwell managed a plantation that produced more than it should have with fewer workers than required. People noticed, questions were asked, and then suddenly those questions stopped. Elizabeth disappeared, and with her vanished whatever truth might have explained the inconsistencies in the historical record. Those who research the Willow Creek story often describe a strange feeling, as if being watched, as though the past is testing whether they are worthy of receiving its secrets. Perhaps it is just the discomfort that comes from studying one of the darkest periods in our nation's history, or perhaps it is something deeper, the lingering vigilance of those who once risked everything to maintain a deception that saved lives. In the words of Dr. Whitaker, the last entry in his journal before all mention of Willow Creek suddenly ends. Some truths are too dangerous to write down. Some secrets must be taken to the grave. I have seen what the widow built beneath her house of lies. May God and history judge her more kindly than her contemporaries would have. The Alabama River still flows past the land where Willow Creek Plantation stood. Its waters, like time itself, carry away evidence of what happened on its banks. Yet sometimes, just sometimes, the current slows enough for fragments to surface, reminders that beneath the smooth story of history lie countless untold stories, waiting for someone brave enough to dive into the depths and bring them to light. In 1958, a land survey conducted before the construction of a highway near the former Willow Creek property uncovered something unexpected. About half a mile from the original foundation, workers found a series of small stone markers arranged in a pattern that made little sense until viewed from above. Aerial photographs revealed that the stones formed a perfect arrow pointing north. Each stone was engraved with a single letter that, when arranged in order, spelled "follow." The discovery might have been dismissed as coincidence if not for what was buried beneath the final marker. 3 feet underground, a metal box contained a single item, a hand-drawn map of underground waterways connecting the Alabama River to tributaries leading north toward Tennessee. The map was unsigned, but handwriting analysis later confirmed it matched samples of Elizabeth Caldwell's writing found in plantation records. The map included notes about water depths, hidden docking points, and locations marked only as safe harbor. Most notably, it had a coded message along its border that remained undeciphered until 1965, when a linguistics professor from Tuskegee University recognized it as a substitution cipher using biblical references common among abolitionists. The decoded message read, "25 souls delivered from bondage into light. More will follow. The river remembers what humans choose to forget." This discovery supports the theory that Elizabeth Caldwell was running a sophisticated underground railroad station at Willow Creek, one that used the river system to move escaped enslaved people north. But it also raises questions. How did a Southern widow with no known abolitionist ties develop such an operation? What changed her from a conventional plantation mistress into someone willing to risk everything to challenge the system that gave her privilege? Partial answers may lie in correspondence found in 1964 in the attic of the former home of Reverend William Parker, a Northern missionary who had spent years in Montgomery during the 1840s before returning to Massachusetts. Among Parker's papers was a letter addressed simply to E, suggesting Elizabeth may have had abolitionist sympathies long before her husband died. "Your position remains uniquely valuable," Parker wrote in 1847. "Continue as you have been, observing all while appearing to see nothing. The time for more direct action will come. Patience in the service of righteousness is no sin." This suggests Elizabeth may have been part of an abolitionist network years before actively hiding runaway slaves, possibly gathering intelligence on slave catchers or plantation security throughout the area. If so, her husband's death may have been less a turning point than an opportunity to expand existing activities. Dr. Whitaker's journal offers another clue about Elizabeth's transformation. An entry dated 3 months before the first recorded visit to Willow Creek, after Thomas's death, mentions treating Elizabeth for injuries that looked like those from domestic abuse. She again showed bruises on her face and arms. As before, she claimed they were from falling down the stairs. I remain unconvinced, though it is not my place to challenge a husband's authority in his household. This detail hints that Elizabeth may have had personal reasons to resent the power structures of Southern society beyond moral objections to slavery. The complexity of what Elizabeth appears to have achieved becomes even more remarkable when viewed in detail. Operating an underground railroad station anywhere in the South was incredibly risky. Doing so as a widow managing it alone on an active plantation shows a nearly unimaginable level of danger and logistical difficulty. How she handled the daily operations of both the plantation and the hidden station is astonishing. Archaeological evidence indicates the underground rooms could shelter at least 20 people at once. Feeding, caring for, and eventually relocating that many fugitives while keeping up a credible public appearance would have demanded exceptional planning and resource management. Part of the solution may lie in who Elizabeth chose to retain at Willow Creek after selling some of the enslaved workers. Records suggest she kept mostly family units rather than individuals chosen solely for productivity, as typical plantations would. This hints she may have been identifying people she could trust with her secret work, especially those whose relatives had been sold and might be trying to escape from other plantations. Elizabeth's purchases after her husband's death offer further insight. She greatly increased orders of medical supplies, long-lasting preserved foods, and cloth suitable for travel. She also acquired several books on river navigation and local geography, unusual materials for a plantation mistress. Most notably, she converted much of Willow Creek's cotton production into food crops within 6 months of assuming control. Agricultural records show expanded plantings of potatoes, beans, and corn, staples capable of feeding many and easily stored without drawing attention. Neighbors noticed these changes but dismissed them as trivial rather than recognizing them as strategic. The fate of those Elizabeth is thought to have assisted remains largely unknown. Underground railroad operations were intentionally compartmentalized, with each conductor knowing only the next stop on the route, not the ultimate destination or outcome. This safeguarded both the escapees and the network if a single operator was captured. Yet, a remarkable document discovered in 1962 in Canadian archives may offer a clue. A church register from a settlement of formerly enslaved people in Ontario lists 3 families arriving in 1851 with a peculiar note beside their names, delivered by the River Widow. If this refers to Elizabeth Caldwell, it confirms that at least some she helped reached freedom. The human cost of Elizabeth's work extended beyond those she assisted directly. In 1852, a year after she vanished from Alabama, 4 enslaved men from nearby plantations were executed for allegedly plotting an escape. Court documents indicate their questioning included inquiries about hidden rooms and the widow's operations. Whether these men had a direct link to Elizabeth's activities is unknown, but the timing suggests possible retaliation against those suspected of involvement. What became of Elizabeth herself remains uncertain. Historical records give conflicting hints. A woman resembling her appears in Boston Society records in 1852 under the name Elizabeth Rivers, perhaps chosen symbolically. This Elizabeth engaged in charitable work for fugitive aid groups, yet maintained a private life. She never married, seldom had her picture taken, and left behind few personal papers when she died in 1874. Another theory emerged in 1966 when historian Martin Granger found shipping records of a woman named Elizabeth Caldwell boarding a ship to England in June 1851 from Virginia. Passenger lists show she traveled alone with 6 trunks of belongings. Whether this was the same Elizabeth from Willow Creek cannot be confirmed, though the timeline fits her disappearance from Alabama. Perhaps the most intriguing possibility comes from oral histories collected from descendants of formerly enslaved people in Montgomery. Several families preserved stories of a white woman who abandoned wealth and lived among free black communities in northern states under an assumed name. These accounts describe her secretly teaching reading and writing, disappearing when slave catchers approached, and memorizing the routes to freedom. The underground rooms at Willow Creek yielded one final haunting clue. During a brief 1968 excavation, before the project was halted, researchers discovered etchings on a limestone wall in what seemed to be a sleeping chamber. The marks formed a rough tree with 25 notches on its trunk. Below it, in a different hand, were the words, "Remember us." Whether left by someone passing through on the way to freedom or by Elizabeth herself as she prepared to leave Willow Creek forever is unknown. What is clear is that someone wanted the story preserved to show future generations that beneath manicured lawns and white columns of Southern gentility, resistance thrived. People risked everything. Lives were changed. In 1959, during the early civil rights era, a 96-year-old woman named Sarah Johnson recalled stories from her grandmother who had been enslaved in Alabama until emancipation. Sarah told of a white woman with eyes that could see in the dark, guiding people through tunnels without light. Her grandmother said this woman had maintained one life outwardly and another inwardly for so many years that even she sometimes could not tell which was real. But those she helped always knew. They knew the truth. The story of Elizabeth Caldwell and Willow Creek Plantation remains one of the South's most enduring mysteries, offering a rare glimpse into the hidden world of resistance that existed within the heart of the slave system. If Elizabeth truly ran an underground railroad station beneath her home, in plain sight of a society that would have executed her for it, she demonstrates a rare courage. The courage to live a double life when revealing the truth would be deadly. Today, Willow Creek Plantation bears little resemblance to what Elizabeth knew. The land has been divided and redivided, passing through owners unconnected to its past. A small historical marker, erected in 1970, briefly notes the plantation but says nothing of what may have occurred beneath its foundations. Some histories, it seems, remain underground. In 2002, ground-penetrating radar created a full map of the tunnels that once connected the hidden rooms to the river. The scans revealed a previously unknown small chamber beneath what would have been Elizabeth's study. Sealed since the 19th century, it contained a single object, a woman's gold wedding band engraved with the words, "Until all are free." The ring now sits in a climate-controlled display at the Alabama History Museum, labeled simply, "Artifact from Willow Creek Plantation, ownership unconfirmed." Historians of the Underground Railroad often note its story is one of silences, untold stories, unrecorded names, undocumented heroism. By design, participants left as few traces as possible. What we know of Elizabeth Caldwell and Willow Creek hints at lives lived in secret, courage displayed in darkness, and a legacy that continues to challenge what we think we know about resistance in the South. Elizabeth Caldwell and Willow Creek have reached us through fragments, rumors, and the occasional artifact that somehow survived the deliberate erasure of its own history. Perhaps that is fitting. The true measure of Elizabeth's achievement, if we interpret the historical evidence correctly, lies not in what was recorded, but in what was not. There is no massive record of escaped enslaved people at Willow Creek, no documented arrests of those she helped, no public punishment of a plantation mistress turned abolitionist. The absence of these events may be the strongest proof of her success. As historian Rebecca Thornton wrote in her 1969 study of Willow Creek, the most effective resistance often leaves the lightest footprint in the historical record. If Elizabeth Caldwell truly sheltered fugitives beneath her plantation while keeping her social position, her greatest accomplishment was making sure that nearly a century later, finding clear evidence of her actions would remain almost impossible. The last piece of the Willow Creek story came in 1968, when a descendant of Dr. Samuel Whitaker found a false bottom in a family heirloom, a writing desk that had belonged to the doctor. Inside the hidden compartment was a sealed letter addressed to anyone seeking the truth of Willow Creek. The letter, dated August 18, 1865, months after the Civil War ended, reads in part, "I have carried the weight of silence for 14 years. Now that slavery has finally ended, I feel I can put on paper what I witnessed without endangering those involved, though I will leave this account secret until long after my death." What Elizabeth Caldwell created beneath her plantation was nothing short of remarkable, a haven of hope in the darkest place imaginable. I treated 25 people in her underground rooms between 1849 and 1851. Some had injuries from escape attempts. Others suffered illnesses picked up during their journey. All carried deeper wounds from bondage that no medicine could cure. Elizabeth worked with precise care. Each person stayed hidden at Willow Creek only as long as necessary, usually 3 to 7 days, before being moved north via the river or land routes. She kept detailed records of every individual,